But there are some things that you kind of, I mean, you know, I can say this now, we kind of had become aware about halfway through the basketball season that B.J. Mullins was probably going to leave after freshman season. Nothing for certain, but we kind of had become aware through the coaches and just kind of how he had carried himself and things like that. But it doesn't do you any good to say that, because then what happens if the kid changes his mind? So, yeah.
But didn't anybody try to talk to B.J. Mullins about when the coaches got in his ear, say, hey, give it a couple more years?
You know what, and they probably did, but ultimately, the kid's got to make the decision himself. And if you're the coach, here's the hard part. Do you really want to try and talk a kid into doing something that he doesn't really have his heart in? And with him, it was obviously,
Right.
everybody knew that it was a possibility. But the point to all that is, we kind of had an idea of that, but we really couldn't say it.
Right.
So, you know, you kind of have to know what's right, what's not right. The other thing, with some of that access and things like that, and this comes into play with the coaches more than anything else, there's times when you're going to have to ask them about things you know they're not really all that thrilled about wanting to talk about. And what you try and do, not so much with the players, not so much with college players, mostly with the coaches and with the involvement with Tressel and with Mata and being around them all of the time, what you try and do is say, hey, look, I'm going to have to ask you about this. Now, I'll give you a good example. If you remember during this past football season, there was a situation with Ray Small, the wide receiver at Ohio State, where he and his dad had made some comments in the newspaper. It had come out that he was going to be suspended, although the team was in. So at one point, he said to Coach Tressel, look, I'm going to need to ask you about this. Now, if you're not going to say anything about it, fine, I'll be ready to move right on to the next question. But at least need to approach the subject. And as we started talking about it, Tressel ended up addressing it himself without me even having to ask it. Just basically saying, and Ray Small won't be available to play this weekend. We don't know what will happen the following week. Now that's a little different situation from the newspaper guys and all of that, because you know, in our relationship being the rights holder and carrying the games, we have a little more access. But the whole point to that being, you want to be careful how you approach difficult situations, understanding that they may not want to talk about it, that they may not say it. You don't want to completely submarine somebody. But if you're going to have to ask about something like that, you need to be ready for a no comment and ready for the next question. You don't want to be you know.